Why did our remote ancestors sometimes stake their most vital decisions on bird entrails? Why do so many people today chart their course with a flip of a coin? Should we continue to rely on signs and omens today?
Hey, and welcome to the 108th broadcast of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Benino. I'm Ben, and opening the show today was my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad.
Our call-in numbers here on CBS New Sky Radio and newskyradio.com tonight. We don't have our 800 number again. I'm sorry. We are working on that. But we do have 248-545-SOUL. That's 248-545-7685. Or if you're listening on a computer, use the nifty instant feedback feature to the right of the newskyradio.com or psychiconair.com homepage as you listen live. And welcome also. We're simulcasting tonight again on ParaX Radio, and we will try and keep an eye on that chat room by the good offices of our guest, whom I will introduce momentarily. She's kind of monitoring the computer for us, and we'll try to get better organized on that as we go. Mary Phelan is the co-host of the popular live metaphysical television show Telepathic TV, which airs in the Washington, D.C. area. Can be seen online from anywhere in the world. She is internationally known as an author, intuitive reader, spiritual empowerment coach, Saichim master teacher, and a number of other things I can't pronounce, EFT practitioner and hypnotist. As a teacher and now Dean of Intuitive Arts at the International Metaphysical University, Mary has designed a comprehensive and in-depth psychic development series which sums up her decades of research and experience. She is working on several books on these subjects as well. Among her other areas of expertise are the symbolism and interpretation of dreams, divination tools, Mayan astrology, consciously creating your life, the opening of the third eye ceremony, finding your voice, and intuitive remote viewing. And if she could do anything for bad colds, I would appreciate her right now, because I can barely
Actually,
talk.
I can. I've got some bird entrails right here.
Okay, I'll scoff those down after the show. Mary's website is www.telepathictv.com. One word, telepathictv.com. And find out about her IMU classes at www.intermetu.com.
Mary Phelan, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to speak with both of you.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure.
The audience, of course.
Of course. And I'm going to let Ben take the first question here.
All right, what exactly is divination?
Well, the way I look at divination is from the moment that we entered into forgetfulness, we became aware that there were things that we did not know. And then we coupled that with the invention of time as we know it. It put us separate from the infinite now. And so that in that feeling of separation, we invent ways to bridge that gap, to bring the information from either tomorrow or another dimensional reality into this moment. So I look at divination as bridges to something that we're not really separated from anyway, but that it appears like we are.
All right, well, the etymology of the word is to ask something of the gods.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, but let me back up just a little bit. Entering into forgetfulness, is that bodily death?
No, I look at that as birth, rather.
Oh, birth, okay.
Coming into physical reality,
yes,
where we have this illusion of time and separateness, we also brought with us this feeling that I don't know something. For instance, is tomorrow a good day to go to war for the ancient leaders? And so they would have to find a way to pull that information in.
It's an excellent way to describe it.
That's where the tools of divination would come in.
Excellent way to describe it. Okay. Well, let's. I've always been fascinated by, again, signs and omens and divination, and picturing, Xerxes or somebody standing over with the priests, asking if it's a good day to attack whoever was going to attack that day, or to fight with the Greeks or whatever, or the Rome, whoever happened to be on the agenda. And very often it would be they would get the signal, or I'll let you talk about it, but they would base major national decisions and decisions about great policies upon these results of these forms of divination. And so, what were some of the forms of divination they used?
Well, I would say probably the most powerful form, and it's one of the most ancient, and it's still in use today, is the I Ching. And that is also known as the Book of Changes. And what I find so profound about the I Ching is that it started out as taking turtle shells and putting them into a fire, and they would crack. And then the divination person, or the king seer, whoever that was reading these shells, would say, okay, if it's a straight crack, that means it's a yes, and if it's a broken crack, it means it's a no. And so it was a good way of getting yes-no answers. And after a while, they realized that the universe really isn't just a yes-no. It's a yes, but changing to no, and a no, but changing to yes. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say they threw the shells in the fire, and the question was, should we go to war tomorrow? And let's say it said yes. But then what if the very next day there was something, some enemy laying in wait, and the whole army got destroyed the following day? So it didn't really do them good enough to get just a yes or no answer. So the Book of Changes came into effect so that you could cast the yarrow sticks or the coins and find out, yes, tomorrow's good to go to war, but it's changing into not a good idea, so you may want to wait. And this is a tool that has been used for thousands of years and is still in use in a lot of Asian countries. And it is extremely powerful.
Now, who did they think they were talking to? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I think that varies with whoever's doing that. Whatever their belief system is of the part that has the knowledge, whether the future is what contains the knowledge, or if it's the gods that contain the knowledge, or the actual yarrow sticks. And that's what made it such a unique, widespread thing, is because no matter what belief system you have, whoever you think or whatever you think contains the knowledge, it becomes accessible through this tool.
That's interesting, because today a lot of people... Well, I don't know. Let me ask... Let Ben ask this first.
Since you're destroying everything. Anyway, what kinds of divination are used today?
Pardon me? What kind are in use today?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, everything. Everything can be seen as a divination tool. One thing that I wanted to note, that modern times, in our own presidential administration, they're using divination.
Uh-oh.
Instead of calling it divination, they call it presidential advisors, or the cabinet members that use computer models to tap into future knowledge. You see what I mean?
I know just what you mean. Futurists.
Yeah.
They're called, yeah.
We use it all the time, whether it's our knees telling us whether it's going to rain that day. There's pendulums that are in use all the time. Our own body can become a tool of divination. As a matter of fact, that's our primary tool. There's tarot. There's so many. I probably would have to step out of the infinite and pin it down a little bit. But people use flipping coins, lucky socks to be able to tell if this is going to be a game where they win. Oh, yes. Whenever I see a sparrow land on my window ledge, I know I'm going to win.
Uh-huh.
I think everybody uses it in some form or another.
Yeah, it seems to be an innate part of human culture at all levels.
So like urban legends, things like that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But
Magic 8 balls.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Bibliomancy. Christians who tend not to get into occult things use bibliomancy all the time, and that's where you think of a question or a dilemma and you open the Bible, and wherever your eyes fall is the answer to your question.
You're absolutely right. We were always getting nailed by people who are more fundamentalist Christians, especially. And for example, and I have to point out that the Bible has a number of examples of casting lots and use of the Urim and Thummim, as they were called. This is 1 Samuel. Various in order to divine, as it were, the will of God. And so, I mean, what is the difference, seemingly, between what they do then and today and what was used in the Bible? So that's I don't know if I want to get into that, because we'll get in trouble again. But in any case, the question we ask on this show is always, where is this information coming from? Because maybe it's a guy thing, but I know Ben and I, and I've learned over 40 years not to trust any of these things until, proven innocent, that sort of thing. And I'm
Yeah.
very wary of anything. And, of course, I can get to the Ouija board, which usually, it almost always ends up in a catastrophe of some kind. And so that's, I think, the question that we're going to deal with when we come back from the break. But Ben had a quick question first.
Right. Do you take divination seriously?
Well, I take it as a tool. I think that a hammer can be a very constructive or a very destructive thing. You have to be smart about it, and you have to also trust your inner knowing. After a while, your inner knowing replaces the divination tool. So I think superstition is what gives more power to the divination tool. It's an inanimate type of an energy. It's a non-judgmental. It's a pathway. Might be a better way to look at it.
Yeah, I like the way you describe these things personally. The entering into forgetfulness, particularly, we know these things down deep, and I think our cultures and our religions seem to have known these things, and we are reaccessing something we already know on that level. But again, we're a little bit concerned about how it's done. It does seem to have varying results. I mean, I've known people, and we often get questions on this show: how come psychics who are supposed to have access to so many of these things end up in lives of complete disaster, one way or the other? And I mean, when you look at it, I mean, the questioner had a point. What are we really looking at here?
What we're looking at is a deep, and you put it very well yourself, it's a deep remembrance of a connection that has never left.
Right.
And our many years of superstition, and I will say some very closed-minded beliefs that are scared and superstitious, but that was perfect too. That was part of our evolution. Cut off this knowledge of the vastness. I mean, you can go into some native cultures right now and see people that are not cut off from this, as in the Aborigines in Australia.
I can tell you stories of them.
Yeah, and what we've done ever since...
I'm sorry, Mary, we have to wrap for the break, but we'll be right back with Mary Phelan and our fascinating conversation on divination. Stay with us.
Be sure to check out Breakthrough with A.J. Barrera, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on The Sky. Breakthrough with A.J. Barrera will feature world-renowned experts in the body, mind, spirit fields. Authors, celebrities, conversations about personal life issues in today's society, and intuitive readings by A.J. Barrera. It's a show that'll transform lives. Breakthrough with A.J. Barrera, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, live on The Sky.
CBS Radio's The New Sky. Believe. NewSkyRadio.com.
Now's the time that we need to share. So send a smile. We're on our way back home. What you need, what you need, what you need. Yeah, come along, do what you need, what you need.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
I love that British guy.
I do too. He sounds like Nick Pope, doesn't he? The UFO expert. Anyway, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal. You just heard the phone number. And I'm suffering from a cold tonight, but Ben's pulling us through with his good nature and good cheer.
Like a sled dog.
And we're Snoopy did that once, right? And we're talking with Mary Phelan, our good friend, who is an expert in, among other things, divination, signs, and omens. And we are looking at how pervasive those things were in the ancient world and today. And the big question of the hour, usually on this show, with whoever we're talking about, is
where does it come
Mary,
from?
Where does it come from? How do we know this is coming from where it says it comes from, this information?
We should have synced voices.
Well, I think one thing to preface this with is that everybody's truth is different and at different levels, and that everybody's belief systems about where that answer lies is very different. And so I would say with that being in mind, or having that in mind, the real place it comes from is within you.
Okay.
It comes from within you, where you are connected to that place, or that it's not really a place, but to the reality that there is an infinite now. So everything's happening all at once at the same time and can be changed with our decisions right now. I'm not giving our power away. But depending on your educational level, and I don't mean that materially, but your evolutionary level, you're going to connect with this part of you in different ways. A child will connect with this in a completely different way, in a childlike way, whereas an adult with years and years of experience will connect in a much more in-depth way. And I think that there are, when I look at people doing divinatory readings and giving messages, I ask my gut, is that true for me? I can't profess to be the truth for everybody. And that's what I think, that people really get the validation, whether that's truth or not. And so therefore it's the real message. It's coming through the validation within you.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember those pendulum things you mentioned before. When Sherry gave us like some of those pendulums, I used one for I think it was my history exam in like 7th grade, and it broke.
What'd you get on the exam?
I don't remember.
No, I don't know. I don't remember either. Well, that's I'm referring to Sherry Devereaux, an old friend of ours who is very much into things of this sort. I like your interpretation of that, and I think I would have to certainly agree. The multiverse approach that we take to the paranormal, rather than the old spiritualist approach, has, as you just said, I believe, all things occurring at once, and us living in many different worlds. I mean, I would go so far as to say that our memories, what is buried deep within us knowledge-wise, has to do with lives we're already living in these parallel worlds. And I think it's an elegant and rather simple and rather beautiful, divine kind of creation. And I like to think that, should you call upon these devices or methods, that you are contacting yourself in a place where you know the answer.
Yes, absolutely. So these are, another way to put it is, these are bridges to your remembrance. And until we can know that we are connected to that remembrance, we will depend on external objects and pathways. But one day we recognize that I already know this from within, and these tools are just awakening the remembrance.
Okay.
And so if you get a reading, and I tell this to people, and no matter what kind of reading, if it doesn't waken that remembrance within your heart, then that's not the answer for you. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to judge it. But just know that that's not the right one for you.
Well, Ben's got a fly in the ointment question.
All right, yes,
okay.
That I do. What does relying on divination say about our free will and critical thinking?
I look at divination as a windsock. We are always on a trajectory. Look at it as riding on a skateboard with a bubble around you, the past behind you, the future ahead of you. when we know in this moment is our point of power, if we use the past and the future trajectory to let us know where we're headed, we can make an educated decision on what to do right now with our power of decision. I use divination not as a predictor. No power lies in any tool. It lies in how I apply that to my life and use it to help me create. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, well, that's yeah. No, I don't really see how. Yeah, put that way, I don't see how there's a problem. There always is an issue between critical thinking and magical thinking. Okay, and I have learned from my son some very valuable lessons, because I grew up in a very highly academic environment, and he did not, other than our library here. And he has really taught me the fact that the intellect, without critical thinking, without any other sort of thinking, can really get in the way and create problems for all sorts of areas of your life. When kept in balance, I believe you mentioned balance, Mary, earlier, it can be transformed. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what say you?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
They are both our larger intelligence or our wisdom manifesting on different planes of existence. You have to be able to be grounded in each plane of existence because they all contain the truth, but expressed in the nature of the reality they're expressing in. And I have always felt that if something is a truth, it will be a truth on all levels. As a matter of fact, if you look at metaphysics, it always precedes physics. Look at the energy body,
Right.
how physics is showing this. Eventually, all truth will be found to be true on all levels. And if you can't find it to be true on all levels, now you have to interpret it differently, then it's not really a big truth. And get outside of it and look at a bigger picture until you find the truth that does transcend all realities.
Okay, well, let me ask my fly in the ointment question. Before we, off the air, we started to mention Ouija boards, okay? Now, there are forms of, everything that's in my theories and books is stuff that I have experienced and have interpreted in my own way. Maybe it's wrong, but that's how I see it. One of them is Ouija boards, and I am one of many voices who does not advocate the use of Ouija boards. As a matter of fact, I urgently warn against it. Now, why do you say, now assuming that I'm right, and I've seen many, many cases of negative paranormal experience in the ghost sense, begin by people, especially young people, using Ouija boards. And why is that so dangerous and other forms of divination seemingly much safer?
Well,
I have an answer, but let's hear yours.
Okay. I think that's a very good question. I think there's a number of things going on. One is superstition creates powerful thought forms, thought clouds that people buy into. And I won't get into that, but it makes a very interesting conversation. Number two is perhaps on some level our vaster self does not want us to go into directions where we're turning over our free will and our body over to something else. The belief in the Ouija board. I don't use the Ouija board, but it's because I find it a very slow, ineffective method of getting that higher knowledge. I already know it. I can connect to it. I don't have to ask some dead pirate to come help me. I don't feel that that's an intelligent thing. I feel it's giving my power away, and so perhaps on some other level we withhold certain things from our acceptability range because it's walking away from the direction of getting to know us instead of toward it.
Okay, because what we often find is that people will use these things and will contact what we refer to as parasites. Other people call them demons. I don't think they have the theological baggage that implies, not at all. But they are hungry, they are hostile, and in folklore, I'm convinced they are the origin of our stories of things like vampires, because they, what do the Babylonians call them? Life-sucking ghosts. They will come in through any way they can, apparently from their own worlds, wherever, whenever that may be, come across into ours, like sometimes even like an octopus. I've seen them at times, like that Vermont case, Ben,
Yes.
reaching into several worlds at a time in order to, and it's simply to eat. They're life forms and they have to eat. unfortunately, the negative energy we put out is apparently seems to be their food supply. So,
Huh.
what you
Well,
I don't know if you're implying that we're always dealing with our. What I'm saying is, sometimes in doing divination, especially with something as negative as the Ouija board, we're not dealing with parts of ourselves. We're dealing with something entirely different. I mean, do you agree with that?
well, no, I don't. I still think that is a superstition, but our superstitions are very real, and they do create on one level. I don't necessarily buy into or believe the demonic aspect of things, and I know that this is a short radio show. I've got quite a story to tell you about how I arrived at that. I do a great deal of research, and I've designed my whole curriculum in the intuitive arts in very grounded, real, scientifically grounded as well as spiritually grounded information. But I feel that when we are afraid, and if we are afraid that the Ouija board is going to summon a spirit, it makes us vibrate at a lower vibration. And everything on that plane of existence will vibrate there, the same as fear. But perhaps it's our higher self allowing us to be so afraid by that demon, so we work through our belief in demons. Who knows? Everybody's got their same path.
Yeah.
There is, if we enter anything, we could be playing chutes and ladders. If we enter into it with a belief or even a thought that that's going to summon up evil spirits, then we will be able to summon up evil spirits. But who's to say if those are really real self-existing things or a projection of our fear? I think it would be an interesting investigation from that.
Well, it has been for me. Gashes in my leg, bumps on my head, and bruises on my arms told me these were real things.
Okay, well, they're real within a certain dimensional plane. And perhaps if we entered into it from a different place at a higher vibration, it will be like a radio dial that tunes us into a frequency where those things cannot exist because they vibrate lower. It's not a criticism or any kind of a critique about that. It's just one thing to contemplate.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you.
Heard a lot of stories about people having negative experiences with Ouija boards, especially since the movie The Exorcist came out. And to me, if I'm going to go into something and I'm going to feel uncomfortable, I don't think that's right for me to be doing.
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm familiar with the it's almost like a quantum bell curve pattern of thinking, which is perfectly valid. It's just, as I say, all my theories are based on things that have happened to me.
Well,
and,
yeah.
I mean, this is, I'm just as, academic as anybody else and sort of thing. But, yeah,
I mean, I have had experiences too, and I know that let's just say your angel comes and you're at this high vibration and you see this beautiful angel or whatever it is a person would believe in. And as we get depressed, someone wonderful can come to us and we interpret it in a certain way. And then after a while we start attracting real entities or real beings that come in and are rude to us. And so we can attract things depending on our frequency. So I'm just saying anything that pulls anyone down into a fear frequency is a good idea to walk away from that.
Well, Ben, do you have any thoughts on this? Ben is very deeply spiritual and has shamanic, if you don't mind me saying, capabilities, in my opinion. Do you have any comment on this discussion?
Well, if we didn't have such a small amount of time, because we have like 1 minute, I could get into it after the break.
Okay. But just, again, I think Ben has a lot to offer on that subject. But, again, I mean, I've seen many, many indications that we have a lot of enemies out there in this multiverse who are just as physical as we are and are, as I say, hungry and hostile and could care less about whether we do well or don't exist at all. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a broader universe than many of us suspect. I would like to think that we're just seeing aspects of or maybe I wouldn't want to see aspects of myself that are that negative. But again, I've dealt with these things for years and years and years, and they seem they're entirely real to me.
Well, let's just say they're on one floor and you're in an elevator.
Yeah.
When you're on that floor, they do exist, but they're not a global truth. And so the deal would be to find...
Oh, I'm sorry. We've got to take a break.
Okay.
Again, we're throwing the football and the commercial comes. We'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Mary Phelan, and our discussion will continue. Stay with us.
Psychic Radio. 24 hours a day. Reach out from beyond to your ears. On the web now. Log on to psychiconair.com. Your spiritual well-being is our concern. This is Psychic Radio. Powered online by AOL at psychiconair.com.
We know you're listening.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
Okay, and we are back with our wonderful guest, Mary Phelan. And Mary, we were just being interrupted here by the break when we were talking about some of the more. I was talking about some of the more negative aspects of things like the Ouija board and entities that have come through, and you had a different opinion.
Well, I guess for me to fully explain where I'm coming from, we'd really need a lot more time.
Well, we'll have you back. Don't worry about that.
Say that I have gone through my own experiences dealing with my fears and things that felt extremely real, and I know what you're talking about. I'm not saying in connection with a Ouija board or not, but if we look at that reference of the metaphor of Christ's 40 days in the desert battling the demons, I feel we all go through that on our spiritual path, and that those demons viewed from a higher echelon are really our angels helping us to remember our power. Because as long as fear is in our reality and in our consciousness, we will always have something outside of us. And if the ultimate destination, let's say, is at one-ment, or to be at one with self, we have to remove all the things that would separate us. Now, with that being said, when you are going through your experience, it's a heavy, dense vibration, and I think we all know what that fear feels like. It's almost like an electrifying fear, that whether it's a nightmare or some experience in physical reality. And the way to get out of that is to vibrate higher. And then that fades like you turn the radio dial. So it is something particular to a vibrational frequency. But when you are in it, it can be real. For all intents and purposes, it can be a real thing.
I think I understand what you're saying, but we have a caller on hold here, so I don't want to belabor
Okay.
it. But I think in my last book, I'm talking about the ultimate unity and the ending these separations, and that even the parasites, as we call them, are part of us. So maybe in a funny way, we're saying the same thing on different levels. But let's take a call now from David Marsh. David is our Upper Midwest reporter for the show, our field reporter, and he's always got something interesting to ask or to say. David, how are you doing today?
This is just a fascinating show for me because I've been a sensitive since I was a child, and it scared me to death when I was a child. And I spent most of my childhood frightened of everything that I sensed. Up until at college, when I entered my freshman year, I attended a lecture by Ed and Lorraine Warren where they just talked about demons and demonology. And then I just attached that every sensitive thing I felt was a demon chasing me. And it wasn't until I empowered myself as a sensitive and as a paranormal investigator was I able to come to terms with this. So I just
That's
think
beautiful. I agree with you.
And this is just fascinating, but I remember the exact moment when I came to terms and empowered myself and took control of it, and all of the negative aspects went away instantly, and all of the what I perceived as demons chasing me no longer chased me and haven't to this day.
But that's exactly what we try and do, too, is to empower people by the Peter Pan theory, where, out with the negative energy, in with the positive thoughts and positive energy. So maybe, as I say, maybe in a funny way, we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, if you guys remember the movie Jacob's Ladder, one of the lines in it, which I found so profound, I quote it all the time, is where he said, when it's time for you to change and you are not at peace with it, then your angels will come disguised as demons to burn your hold away. But if you are at peace with it, then the demons are really angels carrying you to your next place. I find that, I've lived that, and I've discovered that truth within myself. And when, just like you are saying with your story, which, boy, I think everybody can resonate, all of us can resonate with that, when I realize that everything is of angelic realm, and I'm not getting into the specifics of what an angel is or anything, but of the higher vibration, then the perspective of looking at it like that, it transforms into that higher vibration.
Yeah. See, I don't know if we're there yet. So that's the thing. But Ben had a question. David, why don't you stay on the line and
Well, it's not really more of a question. It's just like, I get what you're saying. I just disagree with it. Not entirely, but for the last 2 years, I've been working with my dad, and I've had voices in my head telling me to do things and stuff like that, and always negative. And now that I'm past that, I still hear things calling my name, like, back to that, and I know what you're saying. It's like, oh, well, it's just all in my head. It's not all in my head. Not when I physically see them in front of me.
No, I'm not saying that it's all in your head. I would not say that at all, because when I went through my experience, it was very physical things that affected me very dramatically. And that could be a story for another time.
Sure.
But my experience after I saw The Exorcist, I heard things, I saw things, I had nightmares. It was probably 3 years of my life where it was torture for me. And it was after I walked, that was my 40 days battling my demons. And what gift I got on the other side of that is my power, or knowing that anything of that frequency is smaller than my field, and that by calling upon my entire field, it can diminish to the point where it goes away. I can't speak for everyone, but I do know I walk that journey, and I hear you, and I know that when we are in certain planes of existence, it's irrelevant whether they exist anywhere else. If they're in our reality and affecting us, they're there, and we have to deal with it. And it's through that dealing with it that we evolve past it.
Yeah, David.
So in
Any?
a way,
I'm
we
sorry.
need it. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that. David, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, and I was exactly where Ben is right now, and I know exactly how he feels, and I think that and I won't say it's a phase, but I think it's a process.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Well, again, I look back at my own book, Turning Home, where I'm saying, in a way, a lot of the things you're saying, but it's like, all life is unified, but we are not yet in union with the aardvark. Say, it's just like I don't think we're there yet, and there are real entities and real dangers, at least from every point of view that I can possibly look at it. And someday, maybe someday soon, maybe that won't be the case. But right now it is, and I must say, I think it is reckless and dangerous not to be aware that not that you can't be in control. We take control. We take control of the power that is in us. But to think that we can have absolute control, I don't think that's safe at this point.
No, I'm just talking of possibilities. I would
so
like
am
to
I.
clarify
Okay.
that, because wherever you are,
Yeah.
and you can't be anywhere else. But I'm just talking about my journey through it and where I ended up. And so to me, if I had heard that it's possible to get there when I was going through it, it might have been encouraging.
Okay, we got less than a minute here. David, you got any more thoughts?
Just Ben's the lucky one because he has such a great support system as he goes through this rocky road.
He's
and
the best.
This again goes to what you and I have discussed in the past about children and younger people getting involved in investigating paranormal and going on ghost hunts, especially if they don't have the kind of support system Ben has. Once they start this process, will they come through it successfully?
Absolutely. Well, we got to wrap it up. We're going on a break. Everybody stay with us. We'll be right back here on Behind the Paranormal.
Join Mystic Radio with Rob and Alexis Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and 12 noon Pacific as metaphysical mother and TV personality Robin Alexis helps countless people around the globe live fuller and more conscious lives. Robin serves you using her gifts as a medium, medical intuitive, past life reader, and more. Get your free on-air readings Wednesday at 3 Eastern and 12 noon Pacific, right here on the Sky. And check out Robin's Soul Spa at robinalexis.com.
Know that you feel me somehow. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be, and I don't wanna go home right now. And all I could taste is this moment, and all I can breathe is your light. And sooner or later it's over. I just don't wanna. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I tears that ain't cold, all the moment of truth in your eyes, when everything feels like the movies, yeah, you bleed just to know you're alive. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am.
CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
Okay, we're back behind the paranormal, as the man said, and our wonderful guest today, Mary Phelan, professor of intuitive studies and Dean of Intuitive Studies at International Metaphysical University. And we're talking here with Ben today, and me and Mary, and also David Marsh, our Upper Midwest show field reporter, who always sheds some helpful light on things and some wisdom where sometimes there isn't any. So now, Mary, I just wanted to ask you, sort of to finish up our last conversation, we've been getting into a little bit of the reality or whatever, the nature of the parasitical entities that we often talk about on the show, and that I have had physical altercations with. And you mentioned the term frequency. Now, frequency implies waves.
Yes.
And could you describe what these waves would be?
Well, if we look at the dimensional frequencies as being vibratory rates, everything superimposed on top of each other, then if I want to look into a vibrational rate of 5, let's say, just for sake of talking, then I have to modulate me to a vibrational frequency of 5. That's what we do when we walk into a room, when we entrain to each other. It's a principle of the universe called entrainment. And either you modulate to me, I modulate to you, or we end up going our separate ways of some nature. Now, if we are modulating at a fear perspective, then we are going to go into the fear reality where fear is alive and well and running around and has to eat. Or we could modulate to the higher frequency, just like we were to go into a room with a person that's belligerent, and we can go to a higher frequency. And from that higher vibrational frequency of 10, we are still in the same room with the 5, but we relate to it from a much more empowering place, and therefore cancels that out in our reality. We can choose to go to that number 5 frequency or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I think you're saying similar things to what we do, but I'm used to going in and dealing with it in practical terms. Not that what you're not saying, not that what you're saying is not practical, but we have to go into people's living rooms and sit down at the table and explain it to people who are maybe working a mill or something. And very often it's. We just try to put it very simply, bring in good energy to displace the negative energy, and you can defeat this. And every time, what works, and I don't have to tell you because I know you know, and that's love. Every single time, it brings us together. Okay, David, any final thoughts on that subject before we go on to our email?
Just completely agree. Love is what brings that equal vibration, in my experience as well. So just thanks to both of you again. This was a fascinating conversation.
Well, thank you, David. We always appreciate your calls.
Thanks, John Lennon.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Thank you, John Lennon.
And also, love is that higher frequency, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. It is. Yep. Okay. Well, let's move on. I don't want to miss a chance to do this email here. This is from Colleen in Boston. And Colleen writes...
does Mary have any statistics on how accurate ancient divination was? The Oracle of Delphi, how many generals sent troops into battle based on good omens and then lost?
I don't know how you'd know that, but maybe you do. Go ahead.
No, not really. I don't have any statistics, but I do know that a divination tool is as good as the person doing it, and from the place that they're coming from. Obviously, if you come from a place of fear, you're not going to really tap in with your knowing, but it is still in use today, so I'm going to imagine it's very accurate.
Okay.
Or why would they still be using it?
Well, yeah, that's a logical
And I would say of all the divination tools I've used, the I Ching is the most accurate that I have found.
Okay. What would you... So, I was going to ask you, what forms did you use in your daily life, and would you recommend them to others?
I use probably I Ching, and I use tarot. I don't look at the tarot as having a power of themselves. I use them as a vocabulary I use to talk to a part of me that's more expanded. And I would say tarot and the I Ching. I Ching is powerful, and that's stuff for really... That's a good tool for large things. our class did an I Ching reading on the new administration when it first came in, and about making the U.S. reputation better in the world, and the first was humility, was the answer to that, and it gave a really beautiful description of how to do that. So it's useful.
Well, Kim Jong-il must have loved that. Anyway,
What?
I say Kim Jong-il must have loved that. Anyway, no, I see your point, and I respect it very much. But I still stick by my guns that there are independent entities out there who have not yet achieved the unity that we all seek, and neither have we. And we got a long way to go. We got to watch out for a lot of
you just don't speak to them on their level. You say maintain your own level when you speak to them, which is the level of love.
Yeah.
And then
Interesting you say that, because we have been doing experiments, and I started this a long time ago, but we've really been concentrating on it, is when dealing with negative entities, as I say, what we call parasites, directing love toward them, not just encouraging the people in say, a home or in a family to come together in love and to, protect themselves that way and to expand the love, but to direct it at these entities. And the results have been very interesting. One began, I'm thinking of in the Midwest, began to apologize in whatever way it could for being what it was and the way that it had to sustain itself by feeding on the guy's energy and all this stuff. So
you lifted it to a higher vibration where you made it come to you instead of you going to it.
Yeah, well, that certainly seems to be what's happening. So this may be certainly something we're definitely going to concentrate on in the future. And, I thank you for your contribution and good thoughts on that. So tell us about what you've been working on and what's going on in your books and all that kind of thing.
Okay, well, I've developed a really interesting curriculum at International Metaphysical University, and I'm excited. I'm teaching a fair number of the classes myself, but we've got a lot of internationally known people that will be teaching classes. And as far as our TV show, Telepathic TV, it's a live call-in show also, and we cover a wide variety of topics, and a lot of it has to do with dealing with fear so that you can become bigger than any fear. And I am working on a book on dream symbolism and dream interpretation. It's very comprehensive, probably more information in those than a lot of books that I've gathered. So I'm excited about that. And I have 2 decks of online divination cards, which you guys might like to play with, the Inner Wisdom cards and the Spirit Animal cards. Sure. And there is the principle of that synchronicity.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go just flat out of time, Mary, but we will be in touch. We're going to have you back, and thank you for a wonderful conversation, and many blessings in your work.
Oh, thank you, and you as well. Thanks again.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye, Lynn. Okay, again, we remind you, BehindTheParanormal.com is our show website. You can buy my books, you can subscribe to our online newsletter, or you can apply to become a show reporter like David. And Ben,
yes. Podcasts of all our shows are available at newskyradio.com or at our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com.
And we'll get those caught up as soon as we can. So many thanks again to our producer, Will Kosnick, our good friend, and we'll see you right here next Sunday, and that's February 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, on CBS New Sky Radio, newskyradio.com. And we'll welcome back Cassandra Eason, author of 80 books. How do you do that? And one of Britain's greatest experts on magic and folklore. We'll talk about the paranormal and nature, specifically nature spirits.
All you listeners who've written to us about experiences with these little people, critters, whatever, now's the time to send in your questions.
Yep, send in your questions. And again, check out our Saturday show, WOON 1240 a.m. in southeastern New England, ONWorldwide.com. That's at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll leave you with a quote from none other than Mahatma Gandhi: "A small body of determined spirits fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission can alter the course of history."
We'll see you next week.